Welcome, Florida, to the national finals. Congratulations on being a representative at the national finals. It speaks to how well you've done in the first semester. Congratulations. I'm Edward Volpe, and I'm an attorney in Denver, Colorado. And my fellow judges are?
Hi there, my name is Caitlin Johnston. I am an attorney in New York City, and I am also an alum of the program, but I did not make it to nationals, so you've already bested me, and best of luck.
Hi, I'm Ed Murphy. I'm a Superior Court judge in Pierce County, Washington, which is in Tacoma. And congratulations on reaching the finals.
And if the students would introduce themselves, please, in the order that they will be presenting.
Good afternoon, judges. Thank you for having us. My name is Victoria Torres.
Good afternoon. My name is Amanda Herrera.
Good afternoon. My name is Lily Marie Quintanal.
Good afternoon. My name is Julianne Mendez, and we're very happy to be here today. And thank you so much for your time, judges.
All right, let's get right to your question. And as I presume you are already aware, it is question 1 today. And I'll read it to you. A result of the decision in Wisconsin v. Yoder is that any parent or guardian can refuse to let their child go to school beyond the 8th grade or learn about a subject by saying it's against their religious beliefs. Do you agree or disagree with the results of this decision? Why or why not? What words, if any, are found in the United States Constitution or in state constitutions that protect the right to an education? How have courts balanced religious beliefs with other rights? Timer ready, you may begin.
Congress shall make no law respecting an establishment of religion. The right to religion is one of the chief principles that has been brought upon us by our founding fathers, solely to protect, defend, and sustain our religious individuality from the government. In Wisconsin versus Yoder, the Supreme Court held all power and reason to point out that although students are granted the right to education, their own individual liberties were more important. They favored the First Amendment and our free exercise clause over the individual state's interest in education. They also pointed out that through high school education, as students age, certain of this material can be impairing on the students' religious beliefs. During this case, we saw no violation in health, no violation in safety, no true moral conflicts, and there were no infringements upon others' freedoms or religion. It was the sole, unpretentious decision on a family's religious choice when it came down to education.
On the contrary, every individual has a birth-given right to receive education. Education shall be directed to the full development of human personality and to the strength of respect for human rights and fundamental freedoms. In essence, Article 26 of the Declaration of Human Rights conveys the importance that education holds in our nation. Similarly to our religious freedom, no one shall question the state's responsibility to protect our children from ignorance. The state of Wisconsin explained to the courts that the Amish children are given the choice to shift their religious beliefs at adulthood. To deprive a student of basic life skills is equally as unjust as discriminating against them for their religious beliefs.
In San Antonio School District versus Rodriguez, Justice Powell held that though education is one of the most important services performed by the state, it is not within the limited category of rights protected by this court and by the Constitution. Nowhere in the Constitution is there any language that protects the right to an education. However, it can be argued that through the 9th Amendment, in which it discusses the rights not guaranteed by the Constitution are presumed to belong to the people, education is one of them. Similarly, in the 14th Amendment's Equal Protection Clause, it states that each state should require equal access to schooling. Now, where the Constitution lacks a formal right to an education, state constitutions have taken the liberty of forming some sort of amendment to their constitutions in regards to education. This is appropriate because establishing a public education system is a right reserved to states according to the 10th Amendment, in which it establishes federalism. In the Florida Constitution, Article 9, Section 1, it states, "The education of children is a fundamental value of the people of the state of Florida. It is therefore a paramount duty of the state to make adequate provision for the education of all children residing within its borders."
The debate over the perfect balance between religious beliefs and the civil rights of others has always been relevant. Through judicial review, the Supreme Court has played an active role in this debate, deciding both in favor and against religious freedom. One of the earliest examples is in Reynolds versus United States, where it was decided that Congress can outlaw polygamy, even if it is done with religious justification, and that one cannot break a law simply because of their religion. In Epperson versus Arkansas, however, the court ruled that it was unconstitutional for a state to prohibit a teacher from teaching evolution, even if the state claimed religious motivations. The struggle between religious beliefs and civil rights has persisted to the 21st century. Like when the court ruled in favor of Masterpiece Cake Shop, a bakery that refused to make a wedding cake for a gay couple, for example. Or when it ruled in favor of Hobby Lobby, stating that a corporation can also have religious beliefs. Thank you.
How did we do for time? Well, we'll go ahead. You have already addressed the question of whether or not Wisconsin v. Yoder imposes upon a student's right to achieve an education. If that is true, why do you think that the Supreme Court favored the parental rights to impose religious beliefs on their students, as opposed to the student's right to a higher education and therefore self-realization in the form of a career or whatever else they choose? Why do you think the court ruled in that way?
Well, Judge, given that the children were minors, I believe that perhaps the parents have control over their right to education. However, it still stands my point that perhaps given a different circumstance, these children could have changed their religious beliefs to, like we stated, a career or a different life choice in the future. But it is their parents' responsibility to kind of see what is best fit for that child and for those religious beliefs.
Let's go to the next question.
Sure. What if the parents' religious beliefs say that young girls should get married and start having children at the age of 15? How would you analyze that?
Well, I actually believe that this ties almost directly to the question that I responded to, the balance between civil liberties and religious beliefs. I think it's a very fine line. I think that when religious beliefs tend to step over another individual's civil liberties, we're looking at a much bigger issue. Now it's looking at a person, the infringement of a person's right to choose their own life. So although I think that religious beliefs should be respected, and I believe that if the parents hold those beliefs should be respected, but I do feel like the child's civil liberties would be in violation at that point.
If I may add on.
Sure.
So, thank you. Like my colleague mentioned previously, there's also a fine line in which they, at some point, like you mentioned in the question, they are the age of 15, but then they will soon become an adult and can make these decisions for themselves. So there is that fine line that we are stressing here, in which the civil liberties and the religious beliefs are sort of clashing, because once that minor becomes of age, they do have the option of going their own path and following their own religion. So if they were to do these certain practices at such a young age, that's where the matter gets much more strained.
Let me make sure I followed that argument. So is this panel saying that you are okay with the restriction on the letting religious sects stop educating children, but you're not okay with letting religious sects do arranged marriages for children?
Well, it is my belief that the child's civil liberties should prevail. And now across our panel, we might have differences of opinions, but my belief is firmly that although it should be respected that the parents believe or hold these beliefs, at the end of the day, it is my opinion that according to the Bill of Rights and according to the 14th Amendment, the child's civil liberties should prevail.
Also, sorry, to add on, I wanted to mention how there's a grand difference between education and the public world, the public life, private lives. And when it comes to education and religion, it is seen as public interest versus moral beliefs, moral understandings when it comes to that person. That's why I mentioned in my speech that there were no contradictions when it came to morals, because it dealt with the school education and then the family's personal and moral beliefs when it came to stopping this education, which, as we saw in the Supreme Court, they had all right to do this, as it can also be seen in various other cases that have been brought to court.
Ed, have you asked your question? Oh, go ahead.
Sure. Should public school students be allowed to participate in religious clubs held on school grounds after school? And why or why not?
Well, it depends if they are student-run clubs or if they are run by the schools. Public schools are not allowed to favor a certain religion, such as public places. The government is not allowed to, but if it is a student-run, a student-run club, a student-run place, maybe even out of school, then it is allowed.
I would like to echo what my colleague said. The school itself is not allowed to hold a religion or enforce a religion or impose a religion, but students themselves should have the liberties of holding these organizations as long as it is something that the students want to do, as long as it is something that the students do themselves. So I would just like to echo that from my colleague's response.
Yes, much like the Establishment Clause says that the country cannot make one singular religion in which the people must practice, schools must also not make one singular religion in which the people and the students must practice in a public education system.
The law allows a student to go to a religious school consistent with their individual faith. Could a state or other governmental authority compel a student of that faith to go to the religious school as opposed to a public school?
I believe that the government does not have control over that. I do believe that the families and the students themselves do have a right to choose whether they want to go to a public school and a private school. This is why we're given that option. This is why these schools exist. And this is why much public schools accommodate to these certain religions. In Zorach versus Clausen, this is a case from 1952 in New York City. There was a certain release time that was placed for all students. So it can be an accommodation for students who have a certain prayer time and then students who have a rest time. So it was something that was an accommodation, not just made for these religious students, but everyone all around. And it is something that can function in public schools, as we have seen.
If I may agree with my colleague, I also know that the right to education is something that all children or all students must have. However, like Ms. Quintanal stated, the families have the right to choose whether that is a private form of education or a public form of education. And this also lies within the state's right to allow the families to have this right for the students.
Very good. Do we have another question?
If we have time, you mentioned the cake case. Tell me about what that is, and is the federal government establishing a state religion?
Sorry, that's time.
You got saved by the bell. All right. I figured that would happen.
All right, students, very well done. I was impressed by your presentation and by your individual thinking when you said, "It is my belief." That's something we want to hear from students in this program. We want to hear what you think as a result of the study, the very intense study that you've carried out in order to be here. I was impressed that you knew a variety of Supreme Court cases, the San Diego Independent School District versus Rodriguez. I thought that was very, very impressive. That's a very recent case, and yet you were on top of that. The Zorach v. Clausen case was very impressive too. With regard to the question that I asked you about whether or not a state could force a student to go to religious school, I was sort of thinking in terms of Brown v. Board of Education, which says segregated schools are inherently unequal and therefore they cannot be segregated. But you indicated that it would be improper in any event. You talked about parents having control, and yet you were clear in your position that students have the right to fulfill their own lives. And I think that is a very important philosophical principle on which this country was based. Self-realization, meaning, you have the right to life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness as guaranteed by the Declaration of Independence. And then we have the common good, which means that we want to promote common benefit, and certainly education produces common good, because the more informed we are, as you students currently are, the better off we will be. I think, the Epperson case versus Arkansas, I thought that was very interesting. You came up with the First Amendment. I thought that was an interesting reference as well. But that's enough for me. I want to again congratulate you on a job well done.
I'll echo Judge Volpe's comments. I really enjoyed your prepared remarks, and I thought you did a really good job of, and not all teams do this, of tying back your responses to our follow-ups to what you already said in your prepared remarks to kind of pull it through, as opposed to them being just very disjointed. But you also managed to bring us a couple new cases in the follow-ups that you didn't have in your prepared remarks. That's always what we like to see, and that's an easy way to impress us if you've got that recall for some of those cases. Amanda and Victoria, I was pushing on you because I wanted to see if you would get anywhere near the tests that the Supreme Court uses to weigh religious beliefs, and also whether you might go talk to me about Griswold v. Connecticut, or some of the privacy doctrines that are in the Constitution that might have something to say about whether a child can be forced to, have a baby for religious reasons. That's a tough question, but I think it's a really interesting one, and it really pushes on, do we have a right to an education? Okay, do we have a right to bodily integrity? Where do we draw those lines? But you did a great job. It was really wonderful to talk with you all today. So thank you.
And I would just echo the comments of the previous judges that have mentioned this. I think it was really interesting to hear the different opinions in the initial presentation, that you had somebody take one position and then right away somebody said, well, I disagree, and this is my thought, and that's fine in this context. Is we don't want all of you to be up there and parroting the same thing. So presenting the different sides of it, I think, is really important. I think Judge Johnston's question about the sect being able to determine that a child 15 should be married and start having children might have shifted the thought process a little bit in looking at the education piece in Yoder versus looking at that. And you kind of have to take a different perspective on it. And Yoder was decided basically from the standpoint of what the parents' rights were, and it wasn't presented in a sense of what were the students or the children's rights. And the justices were pretty clear that case hasn't come before us, and it's not here before us in this case. So how that might be looked at differently as we go along, but when you put it in a different context, it gives you a different thought. And I thought each of you handled that very well throughout. And I did, like Judge Volpe said, appreciate the citations to the different cases that you brought up. So you should be proud of yourselves. Congratulations. Well done. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.